Hi. Thank you for coming back from lunch for this exciting panel. Just waiting for my slides to be loaded. So I added a subtitle to the session, Leveraging Digital Technology. As we heard this morning, a lot of more traditional modes of delivery of financial education have had mixed success. And so in this session, we're going to hear about new modes of delivery using innovative and new technology. I'm going to give a very, very brief introduction. So just to put this in context, there's been a rapid growth of financial products using new technology, for example. According to the Global Findex data, between 2011 and 2014, there were 65 million new accounts in bank accounts in sub-Saharan Africa. 61 million are mobile money service accounts, leveraging mobile payments and access to mobile agents to receive banking services. We see in China, we saw 180 million new accounts in the same time period, in part driven by the merchants, over 500,000 merchants around the country offering banking services. We also saw, for example, in India, 175 million new accounts, made possible in part by 2 billion biometric financial identification numbers, Aadhaar numbers, which allowed the country, India, to lead the introduction of JDY accounts, again, linked electronically to these biometric IDs. We also saw financial liberalization, allowing bank agents, merchant agents, mobile agents, as well as government and private sector initiatives. For example, in Mexico, over 10 million accounts were opened between 2011 and 2014, in part driven by government efforts to pay all government transfer payments electronically into accounts. Globally, we found that 1 in 10 new accounts opened between 2011 and 2014 were opened in order to receive a government transfer payment. Financial inclusion remains a major goal. About 2 billion adults remain unbanked around the world. Yet there are many global efforts. The World Bank has a goal of universal financial access. Account ownership is now a UN development goal, target 8.1, as well as efforts led by the G20 and others. But yet are adults equipped to make optimal choices? As account ownership and access to banking services becomes easier, so does access to digital credit, for example, which can now be accessed with a click on your mobile phone. Do people understand the ramifications? According to numbers I recently heard, about a quarter of young adults in Latvia already have black marks in their credit records because of late or defaulted digital credit. And so why are people making these suboptimal financial choices? Well, financial products are becoming more and more complex. Adults may not have the financial numeracy or the actual numeracy to calculate interest compounding, anticipate changes in interest rates, inflation. There's also the intertemporal trade-offs, the understanding that saving today to benefit tomorrow. People have self-control problems, unable to save for the future, which is so far away, and the simple procrastination. There's also, my colleagues did a great study in Mexico and elsewhere, mystery shoppers, and when they went into banks to apply for credit, and a very high percentage of the times, they were not given full or correct information. And so with this lack of complete information, the lack of numeracy skills, people are often increasingly, especially more vulnerable groups such as the poor, such as women, are more vulnerable to also facing abuses in the system, facing potential credit crunches. So as was discussed earlier today, the impact of traditional textbook education has been mixed at best. Although, as Anna Maria said, this doesn't mean we should give up, but rather we should be trying harder, getting more creative and new modes of delivery. We also find that even modest effects tend to dissipate in the medium term. People may answer interest rate questions correctly in the short term, but it's not changing their behavior in the longer term. We also find that it's really hard to get people to show up, especially adults who are out of school, for any sort of financial education training. And not only do these sessions tend to be shorter, but we find tremendous variance among the leaders and the people teaching these classes. And so what we'll talk about here today is the next wave of delivery. Again, leveraging new technology, whether it be text messaging, apps, targeting youth, targeting teachable moments at the point where people are applying for credit, at the time that a migrant wins the lottery to migrate to a new country. Innovative modes of delivery. This includes soap operas, comic books, video games, personalizing the content, for example, through personalized text messaging, which has been very effective, incorporating behavioral channels, as we heard about in the last session, and it sounds a little scary, but it's referred to as combination therapy, which is simply all of the above. And so I will, we'll get back to this last slide. My colleagues here on the panel will introduce themselves, and I would look forward to a very exciting panel. So we will start with Will Carmichael. I'm sorry.
Is that working? Can you hear me?
And you have the option to get up and sing and dance or stay in your chair.
Very pleased. I will like to stand up. There we go. So forget presentation up. While that appears, my name is Will Carmichael. I'm CEO of Rooster Money. We're a startup based in London. And we launched a pocket money app about 18 months ago. And what I want to do today is tell you a little bit about why we created it, how we've done that, and a little bit about that process and give you some of those insights. And I'm probably pressing the wrong button. Is it? If the sky comes we've got a... Oh, there we go. And actually, shall I wait? Stay. Yeah, always get one. Brilliant. And actually, firstly, I want to say, we've been building a product for the last sort of 2.5 years now. And you get very embedded in that, and you're hidden in your office, and you're working away on it. And it's so exciting to actually surface and come to something like this, where there are so many amazing people in this room doing incredible things. And I think that it's a hugely exciting point in financial education in Mexico, across Europe, around the whole world. So thank you for letting me be a part of that today. But yes, as I said, we're building a pocket money app. And Rooster Money is really designed to answer one simple question. How do I, as a parent, teach my children some of the values that I learned as a child, or wished I'd learned, and how do I make that relevant in a digital economy? And what I want to do, as I say, is give a little bit of background on why we built it. I'm sure you'll agree that life is not linear. We can't predict what might happen financially to us as individuals in a year or 10 years' time. Some of us, well, one of us might win the lottery. You might get that amazing job promotion. Your great aunt might leave you a huge amount of money, or you may lose your job or have illness in your family that has a financial impact. While you can't predict those individual challenges, what you can do is start working towards how you approach it and building confidence in money. I believe that the world would be a better place if we all started talking about money to children at a much earlier age. And with that is also building habit. Between 40 and 45% of what we do every day is put down to habit. That's a great opportunity. And when you look at quite a lot of research, children by the age of 5, 6, 7 has started to form some of those habits around money. Understanding opportunity cost, if you buy one thing, it's at the expense of another. The intrinsic value of something, that you can't have everything as instant gratification. The second reason is that I see the home and parents as an amazing vehicle to teach fundamentals in money, particularly at a younger age. And I think that perhaps externally, parents haven't had as much support as perhaps school programs are getting. So that's where we see an opportunity for Rooster Money. Making it part of the everyday and talking about those teachable moments, actually, is when you're at the shops, when you're doing your utility bills, explaining how they work, getting your kids to tidy up their room and incentivizing them so they learn to earn, and getting them to think about what they do with it. The other reason is that our relationship with money is changing. It's no longer about coins and notes. The way you pay for things, I can go for weeks without touching cash. I can use contactless. There's Bitcoin. It's never easier to press an Uber ride button and then only see the receipt in the morning. That makes it a lot harder to teach something to a child. How do you make it tangible when we're becoming cashless? So with that in mind, how have we approached it? Well, I see our mission really as a graduation from first steps, age 3, 4, and taking them all the way up to getting their first bank account. You can literally award stars and act like a reward chart with Rooster Money. You can still teach the same fundamental lessons. You earn something, and you can do something with it. You can encourage them to start earning an allowance, and then getting them to set goals and encouraging them to put some money aside in savings. I should explain that at the moment, Rooster Money is literally a tracker. We act as an interface for the bank of mum and dad. So we don't take deposits ourselves. I think there are lots of opportunities to actually surface some of that and integrate real deposit-based products into it. The other thing is that we wanted to create a framework, not a solution. I don't believe that we should tell parents how to teach their children about money, but what we can do is give them a helping hand and take away all the pain points. Parents cite pocket money as being a great vehicle to talk to their children about money, but remembering to give it, understanding who's got what, keeping track of it, those are all big challenges. So if we can take those away, that means that when you're in the shops and your kids want to get a magazine you really don't want to get them, to have the one with the plastic toe on the front they're never going to read, well, you can turn around and rather than saying no, say, how much have you got? You're saving up for your Lego Death Star, do you really want to get it? And it's amazing the transformation in how the children approach it. They go, actually, I'll hold. The other thing is creating as many touch points as you can. So it's not just about mum trying to manage it on her own, it's getting the kids to log into the account too. It's getting Gran who looks after them on a Wednesday afternoon. And it's Uncle James who can add them a job on a Saturday too. If you can get the whole family involved, that gives you much more opportunity to have conversations. In terms of the app, as I said, a family can set up an account. The children can log in too, and you have pots, so some money to spend. You can put money towards longer-term saving goals. You can put a bit of money aside in charity, and you can also put some money in savings. And from a child's perspective, you can also set them up jobs, so they can get that sense of earning it. Not everyone does it, but it's part of the feature set. And then children can start to think, what do I want to do with it? And put money towards those goals. And then you can also start putting money aside in savings. And you, as a parent, can set an interest rate. So while the bank might offer 1%, you can offer them 10%. Amplify the lessons early on, and hopefully they'll stick to them. So how do we measure success? Well, it's early days for us. One of the key things we said is, how big can this be? Well, while our user base is mainly spread across English-speaking countries, so the UK, the US, Australia is about 15%, Canada, we have users now in over 28 countries, which is amazing. And I think culturally it shows that the concepts of pocket money, however you give it, spread right around the world. We use qualitative feedback because we're trying to trigger positive conversations, which can be harder to measure. So understanding how parents see that transformation in the children, how those conversations change from a sense of saying no to empowering them to make decisions, that's really exciting. And we analyze that and look at it. The key things are making it easy for the parent. You're busy on an everyday basis. How do you make it easy for them and simple? And how do you make it fun and engaging for the children and empower them to make that decision? And then in terms of data, we actually have done something called the Pocket Money Index. And this is really to answer questions that we got from parents. Should I give a regular allowance? Well, between 68 and 75%, depending on which country you're in, so in the US it's about 68%, give a regular allowance. How much pocket money should I give? Well, the average in the US is about $5. And then you can start looking at some of that behavior. So the money that children earn taking a kind of cohort of users over the last year, 23% of that was used on what we call short-term wants. So apps, low-value toys, candy, those regular conversations you have every day, but putting them in charge of it. But the majority has gone towards long-term saving goals. That might be the new pair of sneakers. It might be the bicycle. A lot of children like saving towards holidays. Or it's putting money aside in savings. Now that's extreme, obviously, and the reality, when you're out and you're a consumer and you are 22, that's probably going to balance out. But if you can start really forming those habits early, hopefully we can move the dial on some of those statistics you saw earlier around the amount of savings that people put aside. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into how we've approached it. Do download the app. It is not in Spanish. It will be in 5 weeks' time, we hope, which is really exciting. And let me know what you think. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up with the suggestion from the last session. In my house, the Tooth Fairy brings only foreign currencies, and you have to do the exchange rate before you could spend it. And needless to say, the 10,000 shilling note was tremendously disappointing. So next, David Hernandez.
Lovely, thank you. Hello, everyone. Is it working? Can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Idea to rent out my bike and save the money to pay for my education. Whoa! Now I have 4 bikes. One day I will have bikes from all across Africa. If you need to get from A to B, think of it.
Aflatoon, social and financial education for Kojo and millions of children worldwide.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to do this in Spanish, so I'm sorry for my fellow colleagues here at the panel. Yes. My name is, mi nombre es David Hernández, soy mexicano, por eso lo voy a hacer en español. Soy director de nuevos negocios, de desarrollo de negocios en Aflatoon International. La presentación del día de hoy es From Local Pilot to Global Scale y es el viaje de Aflatoon hacia la educación financiera. Aflatoon es una organización no gubernamental que fue creada en India en 1991 y fue en 2005 cuando fuimos establecidos en Países Bajos, Holanda, como un proyecto en 10 países. Hoy, 12 años después, estamos presentes en 116 países, alcanzando a 4.5 millones de niños, niñas y jóvenes. Nosotros vemos una sociedad en donde niños y jóvenes estén empoderados social y financieramente para que actúen como agentes de cambio por su propio bien, por el de sus comunidades y por un mundo más igualitario. ¿Por qué hacemos esto? Porque nosotros sabemos que hay regiones en el mundo donde 47% de los alumnos no terminan la educación básica, porque sabemos que los jóvenes no tienen las herramientas financieras para salir adelante, porque sabemos que los jóvenes no tienen las capacidades necesarias para enfrentar los retos del mercado laboral. ¿Qué hacemos? Aflatoon ha desarrollado 4 programas globales. Aflatot para primera infancia, Aflatoon como la organización, para aquellos niños en edad de cursar la escuela primaria y secundaria dentro y fuera de los sistemas escolares. Aflatin para adolescentes y Aflayud, que ayuda a los jóvenes a estar más preparados para la vida de trabajo. Todos nuestros programas están basados en 5 pilares. Empezamos con entendimiento personal y autoexploración, derechos y responsabilidades, ahorro y gasto, planeación y presupuesto, y finalmente el establecimiento de empresas sociales y financieras. Nosotros no solo queremos dar mayor conocimiento financiero a niños y jóvenes, queremos cambiar sus actitudes, queremos cambiar la forma en cómo ven la vida, queremos darles las herramientas para que estén conscientes socialmente, para que tengan las herramientas financieras para salir adelante. ¿Cómo trabajamos? No somos una organización regular, nosotros tenemos una sola oficina basada en Ámsterdam. Desde ahí nosotros creamos las capacidades para 192 organizaciones con las que trabajamos en 116 países. Desde la oficina en Ámsterdam les damos todo el apoyo técnico, todo el desarrollo de nuevos contenidos, de nuevas tecnologías, de nuevos juegos, y también siempre estamos poniendo mucha atención en el monitoreo y la evaluación de nuestros proyectos. Al día de hoy hemos entrenado a más de 200,000 maestros alrededor del mundo y alcanzamos a 4.5 millones de niños. Todos los programas que implementamos son contextualizados a las realidades locales. Creemos que no hay una fórmula perfecta, si no el problema ya estuviera resuelto. Trabajamos con organizaciones no gubernamentales, con organizaciones de la sociedad civil, con gobiernos, con agencias internacionales. Estos son algunos ejemplos de las organizaciones con las que trabajamos. Con gobiernos en la región de Latinoamérica hemos colaborado con el gobierno de Honduras, Costa Rica, Perú, y estamos por firmar acuerdos con el gobierno de Colombia, República Dominicana y Brasil. Espero ver la bandera de México pronto ahí. Y esta es la pregunta que vale 1 millón. ¿Cómo sabemos que funciona? Hemos sido muy afortunados y hemos tenido la oportunidad de revisar cada uno de nuestros proyectos. Somos una de las iniciativas globales más documentadas a nivel mundial. Nuestras investigaciones en Perú nos dicen que no solo hemos mejorado la capacidad de los estudiantes y su compromiso con su educación, sino también la de los profesores. Los profesores están mucho más conscientes de su punto dentro de la enseñanza y ahora participan mucho más. En Ghana no solo cambiamos las capacidades financieras de nuestros participantes, también sus actitudes de planificación y su comportamiento hacia el ahorro. Hicimos un metaanálisis el año pasado, donde tratamos de poner todas las iniciativas a nivel global que ven educación financiera para niños y jóvenes en, si no me equivoco, 154 países. Los resultados fueron buenos. La educación financiera funciona si queremos cambiar el conocimiento, si queremos darles el conocimiento financiero a los participantes, pero eso no es necesario. Si combinamos la educación financiera con otro tipo de iniciativas, no solo les damos el conocimiento que ellos necesitan, los ayudamos a cambiar comportamientos, les damos la llave a un futuro mejor. Nuestros logros. Me siento muy feliz de decir que hay un mayor reconocimiento hacia el trabajo que hacemos. El año pasado, The Brookings Institution, una organización basada en Washington, sacó un reporte dentro de las iniciativas a nivel global en el área de educación que mejoran la educación global y que toman las iniciativas a escala. Somos parte de este reporte. Hace 2 semanas la Universidad de Harvard también nos incluyeron como parte de la Global Education Innovation Initiative de la Facultad de Educación. Nuestra plataforma digital para jóvenes es parte de WISE Initiative de la Qatar Foundation, como un ejemplo de cómo la educación financiera está cambiando a nivel mundial. Desde que iniciamos en 2005 hemos tenido un incremento de cerca del 40% a nivel mundial. Pueden ver los verdes, o el número de países en los que empezamos y en los que estamos. Y esto es un esfuerzo de un grupo de 30 personas que estamos en Ámsterdam, que estamos trabajando en conjunto, siempre con las organizaciones que implementan nuestros programas. Creemos en que no hay manera de lograr este tipo de acciones si no colaboramos todos por un bien común. Nosotros logramos estos grandes logros con un presupuesto de 50 centavos de euro por niño por año. Es algo que no muchas organizaciones tienen el orgullo de decir y bueno, nos sentimos muy afortunados de estar trabajando con estas organizaciones. No me queda más que agradecerles por estar aquí e invitarlos a que se sumen a este movimiento, a que sean parte de Aflatun, a esas organizaciones que están presentes aquí, que se unan a nosotros y que tratemos de mejorar la vida de las futuras generaciones para México, para Latinoamérica y para el mundo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Carlos Lopez.
Thank you. I think I will also make the presentation in Spanish. I have the
Sure.
slides in English. Then, bueno, gracias a todos por estar aquí en este summit. Creo que es importante, antes de empezar con las láminas, decir que este grupo, BBVA, ha tenido una profunda transformación hacia la digitalización en general de los servicios financieros y que esa transformación debe también de venir acompañada por una manera de hacer educación financiera de una manera distinta. Y creo que eso es lo que el nuevo modelo que estamos tratando de impulsar dentro de educación financiera ese es el objetivo que tiene, ¿no? Tratar de que sea escalable y que los recursos, ¿no? Los recursos que teníamos para dar talleres, ahora podamos seguir con esa oferta, pero seguir con una oferta mucho más digital, mucho más pegada al uso de los productos financieros. Creemos que la gran cantidad de talleres que el grupo ha dado en educación financiera han sido súper útiles, han mejorado las capacidades financieras de mucha gente, pero nos faltaba tocar otro lado de la educación financiera, que era el lado de darle una herramienta a las personas para poder usar esos conocimientos, ¿no? Porque muchas veces de nada nos sirve tomar un curso de manejo si después no tenemos un coche que manejar, ¿no? Se nos va a olvidar. Y lo mismo puede pasar con muchos de los conceptos de educación financiera si no tratamos de apalancarlos en el uso de productos. Entonces, bueno, pues este modelo, como les comentaba, va desde un diseño dinámico de contenidos. Estamos digitalizando toda la oferta de educación financiera que tiene el banco y la estamos poniendo mucho más al alcance del uso de los productos. Creemos que tenemos que tener muchas más cápsulas informativas dentro de lo que es ya la información y dentro de lo que es el negocio tradicional del banco. ¿Qué estamos haciendo? Imagínense que hoy pues tenemos una estrategia de colocación de productos digitales. Bueno, pues si vamos a colocar productos de manera digital, pues creo que también es importante que si alguien busca hipoteca y le aparece hipoteca BBVA, pues que le aparezca hipoteca BBVA, pero que también le aparezca cierta información que diga, oye, hipoteca, si quieres saber cómo sacar una hipoteca, entra aquí. O sea, ayudarle a las personas a crearles oportunidades y a que cada vez tengan más información en la toma de sus decisiones financieras. Y creo que, bueno, vamos a ahorita mostrar algunos de los ejemplos, ¿no? En esta aproximación que tenemos para dar educación financiera de una manera distinta y siempre cuidando estos 3 puntos que vienen aquí en el focus que pusimos aquí, ¿no? Que tratar de ser lo más escalable posible, lo más de alto impacto que se pueda con las iniciativas que tenemos, desarrollar por supuesto, estas capacidades financieras en los clientes, que de eso ya se venía haciendo mucho y hay un trabajo muy profundo al respecto, y seguir cuidando el tema, sin descuidar el tema de responsabilidad social. Por supuesto, es un tema de responsabilidad social, y tenemos ahí un programa muy grande que se tiene de subsidios gubernamentales con la Secretaría de Desarrollo Social para dar toda la educación financiera a las personas más desprotegidas. Y esa parte es súper importante y por supuesto la cuidaremos, pero siempre tratando de tener estrategias mucho más escalables de lo que se tenía, ¿no? Creo que es bueno ver el contraste, ¿no? Hay startups que están haciendo cosas muy interesantes, como estaba Rooster Money, lo que están haciendo en materia de ONGs con programas como los que tienen. Ahora creo que también es bueno ver qué se está haciendo en una institución que se está transformando digitalmente de manera muy importante. El primer ejemplo que les traigo hoy es el del check-up financiero. El check-up financiero lo incluimos dentro de la plataforma de banca móvil del banco. ¿Qué es lo que pasa hoy con este check-up financiero? Como pueden ver, hasta arriba cuando abres tu aplicación de banca móvil, te aparece un corazón que está palpitando. Cuando tú entras a ese corazón te presenta ahí tu estado de salud financiera. Y ese estado de salud financiera lo dividimos en 4 estados, ¿no? De excelente, saludable, estable y definitivamente crítico. Y esto creo que va mucho la analogía, la gente está acostumbrada con su salud a entender estos conceptos. Entonces es el trasladar o el transformar estos conceptos ahora a un tema de salud financiera. Y lo importante no solamente es que te muestre, no es algo estático. Tú puedes ver tu situación financiera al día de hoy, pero también puedes ver la del mes anterior y puedes ver si está mejorado o si se ha deteriorado en el tiempo. Y ahí abajo pueden ver un recuadro que lo que les dice son unos tips financieros que van relativos a tu estado de salud en ese momento. Entonces tomamos toda tu información y te decimos, oye, si a lo mejor estás en verde y te sobró dinero, pues ¿por qué no inviertes? ¿Por qué no ahorras? ¿Por qué no compras un instrumento de esta naturaleza? O, mejor aún, si estás en estado crítico, oye, te sugerimos que te comentamos que a lo mejor estás utilizando demasiado dinero para el pago de tus deudas. Oye, ¿qué te parece que reestructuras o rebalanceas tus saldos utilizando los instrumentos de esta mejor manera, ¿no? Para que tengas mayor capacidad de pago en un mayor plazo? Entonces, todos esos consejos y tenérselos al cliente de manera inteligente, así como los productos, en la venta de productos, estamos tratando de ser relevantes con la oferta de productos que le estamos dando a los clientes, es muy importante también ser relevante con la educación financiera y estar ahí en el momento que el cliente lo necesita para tomar una decisión. Y esto puede hacer una gran diferencia entre tener una vida financiera saludable o no. Y creo que somos el primer banco en realmente, esto no es una aplicación que vive aparte, esto no es algo que esté separado del banco, esto es algo que vive con el banco y que vive con los instrumentos financieros que las personas hoy tienen. Otro ejemplo importante, tenemos también una app que se llama BBVA Plan, que es ahorra sin que te pese, ¿no? Entendiendo que, como se mencionaba en las pláticas de Behavioral Economics en la sesión anterior, pues, la gente tiene ciertos sesgos conductuales y uno de esos sesgos es que el descontar el valor del futuro a una tasa muy baja te trae problemas, te impide ahorrar y la gente siempre está valorando mucho más el presente que el futuro y el gasto hoy. Lo que estamos tratando de hacer con esta aplicación es tú defines un porcentaje, la aplicación te perfila, ¿no? Dependiendo de tu aversión al riesgo, te hace ciertas preguntas y después de eso te ayuda a definir, te hace una recomendación de decir, oye, tienes que ahorrar para esta meta en específico que tú me pusiste, tendrías que hacerlo de esta manera. Entonces, cada vez que tú vas y gastas con tu tarjeta de crédito, con tu tarjeta de débito, un porcentaje de ese gasto lo toma de tu cuenta de débito, de tu cuenta de cheques, y lo manda a una bolsa aparte donde tú vas ahorrando. Oye, ¿y qué pasa si quieres romper la meta? Bueno, pues también utilizando conceptos de Behavioral Economics, estamos incorporando que te diga, oye, ¿seguro quieres romper tu meta? ¿Estás seguro? Ya estás cerca de lograrlo. Y te recuerda ciertos tips de educación financiera para que logres ese ahorro con fin específico que tienes. Yo creo que en la mañana hacían unas preguntas de que no será mejor que la gente empiece con ahorro a corto plazo y después meterlo a ahorro a largo plazo. Yo creo que las dos estrategias son necesarias, ¿no? Yo creo que la estrategia, lo que está haciendo la CONSAR es muy valioso y este es otro ejemplo para los ahorros con fin específico, que también son importantes, ¿no? Ahorro, como mencionaba Carlos Ramírez en la mañana, para emergencias, o para un viaje, o para comprarme un smartphone. Entonces, esta es otra aplicación importante que tiene, que está teniendo muy buena acogida entre los clientes. Y ya por último, mencionarles el tercer ejemplo de una aplicación que tiene conceptos de educación financiera embebidos en ella, que es una aplicación del banco que se llama Tandap. Esta está por salir en un par de semanas. Ya habíamos sacado una primera versión, que la experiencia del usuario no era muy buena, pero es para hacer ahorros colectivos. Aquí en México todos conocemos los que son tandas y a lo mejor aquí los que vienen de otros países son sistemas de ahorro grupales. Y que es el instrumento número 1 de ahorro financiamiento que utiliza la gente, por lo menos en México y en gran parte de América Latina también. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que hicimos? Si bien entendemos que es un mecanismo de ahorro no tan formal, lo que estamos haciendo es incorporar en la aplicación que lo que sustituye es la libreta donde la gente organiza sus tandas, la manera en que organiza estos esquemas de ahorro colectivo, incluyéndole conceptos claros de educación financiera. Y para que vean la necesidad que hay de algo así, en la primera versión que sacamos de la aplicación, con una muy mala experiencia del usuario, en 2 meses tuvo 60,000 downloads sin un solo peso en promoción de la aplicación. Eso de lo que te habla es de la gran necesidad que hay por este tipo de cosas. Y esta aplicación creemos que lo logra, y posteriormente, obteniendo esta información de los clientes, utilizando tecnologías de Big Data atrás, con estos conceptos de educación financiera, nos va a permitir ofrecerle otros productos financieros y finalmente incorporarlos a los esquemas de ahorro y de financiamiento formales que tiene el sistema. Y bueno, pues creo que esos eran los tres ejemplos que les queríamos presentar, y muchísimas gracias, Leo.
Thank you. It's really worth noting that a primary benefit of digital payments is that it allows affordable and convenient, high-frequency, low-denomination payments, including savings payments to oneself. And so in addition to facilitating the delivery of low-cost financial education, it's also this ability to save. So the next speaker will be Zaidoun Mounier.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zaidoun Mounier. I'm the founder and CEO of Revolution Credit. I want to thank Anthony, and I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to actually be back in Mexico City after 10 years. Since the last visit I was here, I was trying to build a bureau for Experian in Mexico. And so 10 years later, I'm back, and I can't be happier to be here. Let me tell you a little bit about Revolution Credit, because nothing in the name has anything to do with financial education. And that is because when I built Revolution Credit, I really had a different goal. I wanted to do 2 things that I thought were broken because of the years I spent as the Global Chief Data Officer at Experian. One is I found out that consumers all around the world, including in the US, where there's a very sophisticated credit bureau system, don't actually have a true financial identity or a credit identity. In a lot of places we call it credit score, but that in the US there's about 150 million consumers whose credit score doesn't represent them. That's a lot of people. Globally, that number actually goes even to 60 to 70% of all adult population. And so I wanted to actually solve the problem where any consumer who wants to transact in a global world can actually present a financial identity that can be used and accepted across the universe. And also, I wanted to disrupt the bureau model. So today, the bureau model is actually a liability. And while many of including my former employee, try to perpetuate it around the world, it actually is a very bad model. And it needs to kind of change and really kind of come up to the same technology. If you think about the most successful platforms of today, we think about Twitter, we think about Facebook, we think about LinkedIn. Those are the absolute antithesis of what we have in the bureau models. I was born and raised in Baghdad, Iraq. I actually say the bureau model looks like something Saddam would have built, because it is a system where the banks send your data without your permission to a centralized location that you have no access to. And so part of my revolt is to try to actually change that system. So in 2008, there was a credit crisis that actually kind of rocked the US market. And this is really when I became familiar with behavioral science and behavioral economics. And it took me about 3 to 4 years to kind of delve into it, to recognize that it actually provides a solution, not just for how we heard about it as a vehicle to help people improve, identify people with intent, get them to accomplish their missions, or get people to actually create the intent so that they can actually be on that path. But I saw it as a vehicle to actually identify data about consumers that will help define their financial identity. And so that's really how Revolution Credit came about. You will see that actually financial education is an integral part of what we do, but we didn't set out to build a financial education company. We set out to build a company that allows any consumer anywhere around the world to say, I want to build a financial identity. And they can do it just like you can build a Facebook profile or a LinkedIn profile or a Twitter profile. It should be as easy as that. So today, Revolution Credit is the leading behavioral data and analytics platform for real-time credit decisioning. Again, I left Experian and I still kept my blinders on. It's all about solving the credit scoring problem. Our products are delivered through creditors. So this is not an app that you can download. Consumers can't get through it, but really we actually distribute it through financial institutions because we say it's at that point where a financial institution can make something happen. Because you can save on your own, but you can't increase your credit score on your own with today's system. How do these products, so these products actually, as you are making a credit transaction, you're applying for a loan, you are trying to negotiate a price, you are late on a payment, you have a credit card that you want to increase or decrease the amount of credit limit, all these we consider are teachable moments and transactional opportunities. What we do at the point of transaction, we extract behavioral data and put it in real time into the transaction flow so it can be used for decisioning. How do we do that? We actually have designed what we call bite-sized, gamified, personal financial management tutorials, puzzles, and games. Those are delivered at the point of transaction, and as the consumer plays these games and these tutorials, we actually extract this data and fold it into the decision process. In so doing, we're actually serving two masters. For me, for creditors or for the banks, we're helping them add a brand new data set that will help them identify people that they otherwise would have not approved. We call them upwardly mobile consumers. And second, because we actually use behavioral science as the core of our process and science, we actually are very diligent at helping consumers, nudge consumers toward better financial decisions. So as you complete an experience or a tutorial, there's always something that we're going to ask you to do that will help you improve your financial decisioning or your financial life. For consumers, it's actually even better because it's the only technology that I'm aware of that allows a consumer to increase their credit score in real time when they are transacting. And there isn't anything else like it. Let me go quickly through. The core of our application is what we call PFMI, bite-sized personal financial management interactions. And this is what I mentioned. These are puzzles and games, not multiple choice, but actual videos with content and interactive puzzles and games and worksheets that ensure that the consumer is highly engaged as they complete them. As the consumer does them, we extract about 200 data points in real time that we can actually fold straight to, as I mentioned, into either behavioral scores, but in the process, because let me give you an example. So one of the modules is called budgeting. One of the modules is called saving for an emergency. One of the modules is called setting a financial goal. So we don't create random puzzles and games. We actually put them in the context of a topic that we know would help the consumer gain a skill after they leave. So financial education becomes a means to an end, not the destination. So I'm going to do it as a way for me to get approved. I'm going to do it to waive a late fee. I'm going to do it to actually get a better rate. So all those things become, but in the process, you're actually gaining knowledge that you otherwise did not have. It's as simple as this. Of course, it requires a smartphone, but at the point of transaction, if let's say this is Sonia just applied for a loan, the bank tells her based on the data that they have, they cannot approve her, and a pop-up appears. It says, Sonia, congratulations. You have the opportunity to get approved if you successfully complete one or two of these modules. And so in this context, we present it in a way to actually, if you guys remember from the last panel, we trigger system 2. So in actually presenting an offer that has an incentive with what we call a guaranteed or a certainty reward, we trigger system 2, but we also trigger what's called regret aversion and hyperbolic discounting. And this actually invites a whole lot of people who would have otherwise completely forgot about it to actually do it. If you say yes, then the menu appears in front of you on your mobile device, you pick your module, you complete it, you get a certificate, and in real time, you are approved. And so you actually complete this entire experience in about 12 minutes. For creditors, for banks, what you actually are seeing is that you're actually now having an additional dimension that you could look at the consumer that you otherwise did not have. So with the traditional credit scores, you're looking at a number that represents prior payments history. And I always say, how can we define a consumer by their past mistakes? Why don't we look at their future capability? And so this is really where the behavioral scores come in. So in the 200 points that we measure, we're actually measuring your aptitude. How well do you know how to manage personal finance stuff? Your conscientiousness, how diligent. A lot of behavioral science research has been expended to say that conscientiousness is actually a leading indicator for financial performance, and the last is mobility. So now, I don't look at the consumer only by the past mistakes like in Latvia, all the past mistakes that they made, but I actually also give them a chance based on what they know, how committed they are, and where they want to go with their life. When we benchmark it to the FICO score, which is the standard score in the US, you actually see how we completely outperform all expectations. And remember, I talked about nudging. If you see the same effect continues even 4 months later, even with the worst credit score bands, which is really a huge feat. More important to me is that consumers unanimously love it. So when consumers finish, 30% of them take the time to complete a survey. It doesn't happen. Consumers just want to finish and move on. 30% complete and say, we love it. Lastly, today, for creditors, we offer this technology for two products. One is called Extra Credit for all account origination and management, and one is called Back on Track for collections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anna Pantelic.
Great. So while I wait for the presentation to load, Lyra, if you'll excuse me, no soy mexicana, pero hay muchos mexicanos aquí, entonces voy a intentar de hacer la presentación en español. Como dijo Leora, mi nombre es Ana Pantelic, trabajo con la Fundación Capital y hoy les quiero comentar sobre una experiencia que nosotros hemos tenido con el uso de soluciones digitales para poblaciones vulnerables de bajos ingresos, que hoy en día está en muchos países, pero les voy a comentar de una experiencia en Colombia. Nosotros sabemos y hemos escuchado aquí que la educación financiera es una parte de una gran idea de la inclusión financiera. Sabemos que sin poder acceder y poner en práctica lo que uno aprendió, la educación financiera tal cual no va a ser efectiva. Y la Fundación Capital hace más de 10 años que está trabajando con gobiernos, aprovechando de los programas de transferencias monetarias condicionadas para agregar valor y para lograr la inclusión financiera de la población de bajos recursos, además de promover el ahorro. Entonces, nosotros, con base en esta experiencia, hemos visto una muy buena oportunidad para la parte de tecnología. Para la gente que no conoce la Fundación Capital, somos una organización con presencia internacional, pero nacimos en América Latina y estamos presentes en 12 países de la región. Y nuestra labor es mejorar el ambiente, el entorno, frente a la ciudadanía económica. Parte de este proceso, y como les comenté, el trabajo que hacemos con gobiernos y con instituciones financieras, busca pensar en la parte de la escala. Sin pensar en escala, desde el inicio no se pueden lograr los buenos resultados. Y por eso diseñamos soluciones que tienen esta potencialidad de ser escalables. Y nuestro objetivo es de fortalecer las capacidades financieras y lo que se llama financial resiliency. Cuando empezamos a trabajar en educación financiera, eso no fue a propósito, sino que empezamos con la idea de inclusión financiera y la promoción del ahorro. Pero eso no se puede lograr sin la parte de capacitaciones. Y tratamos muchas cosas tradicionales, mucho de lo que hemos visto de soap operas, de telenovelas, de educaciones presenciales, pero cuando esto se busca llegar a una escala de millones de personas, sobre todo receptores de transferencias, no se pueden bajar el costo por persona. Y por eso pensamos en un modelo que podría incluir la tecnología. Nosotros empezamos con un piloto hace 5 años diseñando una aplicación en tabletas que fue diseñada para esta población, efectivamente para compartirles esta capacitación. Y el modelo que tuvimos que diseñar, porque obviamente la población no tiene sus propios dispositivos, sino que tenemos la aplicación dentro de unas tabletas y las tabletas circulan dentro de la comunidad. Y eso también genera unos efectos positivos, porque al circularlo se generan unos lazos entre las personas de la comunidad y unas conversaciones que de pronto no se hubieran podido tener en un grupo muy grande o fuera de la casa. Les quiero compartir algo de los aprendizajes que son muy prácticos y mucho de estos ya lo hemos visto y lo hemos conversado, sobre la importancia de pensar en el diseño y la co-creación con el usuario, de no estar diseñando desde el escritorio, sino muy a la mano con la población, sobre todo si uno va a trabajar con personas con bajos ingresos, con poco alfabetismo. También súper importante es vincular la capacitación con productos para que la gente pueda poner en práctica lo que aprendieron. Una cosa interesante de la tecnología es que nos permite integrar videos, juegos, simuladores. De hecho, esto nació desde una idea de generar un simulador de cajero automático para personas recibiendo sus transferencias que no sabían cómo usar el cajero, y luego volvió a ser un programa mucho más grande. Y la parte de trabajar con socios. De verdad, esto creo que es como la clave del trabajo. Aunque les voy a comentar de esta experiencia que empezamos con lista, también quiero señalar que estamos trabajando en mucho más áreas y vemos que hacia el futuro vamos a tener muchos más retos y oportunidades también de seguir escalando lo que hemos visto. Y solamente para decirles que hoy en día este programa, aunque empezó con un piloto pequeño, ha llegado a 200,000 usuarias, sobre todo mujeres, en 5 países de la región, y pronto vamos a estar pasando también a África. El programa Lista para Ahorrar nació en el 2015, cuando el gobierno de Colombia, Prosperidad Social, lo adoptó como parte de su política pública, buscando llevar este programa a sus receptoras de transferencia monetaria condicionada, que allí se llama Más Familias en Acción. Aquí tienen Prospera, el primer programa de este tipo. Y nosotros, hablando con ellos, queríamos escalar este programa a muchas personas y aprovechamos de la oportunidad también de integrar un estudio de impacto, que lo hicimos con Innovations for Poverty Action, también con varios investigadores que están ahí en la parte izquierda. Pero también después de esta experiencia empezamos a escalarlo más y más, y ahí en la izquierda pueden ver algunos de los socios con los que estamos trabajando, aunque hay muchos más, y de hecho muchas instituciones financieras que están presentes aquí con las que estamos trabajando en México. Aquí pueden ver algo de las imágenes de cómo fue la aplicación. La primera es de Brasil, los otros 3 son de Colombia. También en internet pueden ver más videos y conocer mucho más allá la experiencia, pero solo quería darles como un señal. Y puse varios datos sobre el programa, porque muchas personas preguntan. Con el programa logramos llegar a 100,000 usuarios receptores de transferencias, pero tuvimos 60,000 personas adicionales que se inscribieron. Eso fueron los esposos, los vecinos, mucha gente en la comunidad que les interesó. Tuvimos 1,000 tabletas rotando, y de hecho esto fue una cosa que quiero romper en términos de los mitos, que incluso en entornos con pocos recursos, digamos, con poblaciones vulnerables o con poca seguridad, una tableta que se ve como una tecnología alta puede ser segura, y solamente tuvimos 16 casos de robo o de pérdida. El uso promedio de la aplicación fue como de 3 horas, y lo hicimos en 30 municipios. Les voy a compartir algo de los resultados, y de hecho está por salir un working paper, un documento que resume estos resultados, pero aquí ven en el corto plazo y en el mediano plazo, que el mediano plazo realmente es 1 año después de la implementación, y estamos esperando, yo creo que vamos a pronto tener el largo plazo, 2 años después de la implementación, ver cómo estos resultados tuvieron impacto en el futuro. Y eso es con el Randomized Control Trial, ¿no? El estudio aleatorio de impacto. Vimos obviamente incrementos en términos de conocimiento, y cabe resaltar que estamos hablando de personas de muy baja escolaridad. De hecho, muchos no son buenos con los números. Entonces, los retos de transmitir esta capacitación yo creo que son aún mayores, pero es una oportunidad muy importante que también quiero enfatizar, porque hoy en día son 2.000 millones, 2 billion personas en el mundo sin acceso a cuenta bancaria, y hay muchos que todavía no están recibiendo los productos que necesitan. Entonces es un mercado súper importante para todos los banqueros que están aquí. Siempre quiero resaltar esto, que es una oportunidad para todos. Bueno, entonces en términos de conocimiento, hubo un incremento en conocimiento básico financiero, también de los conceptos de ahorro y de manejo del presupuesto, y también vimos un poquito de incremento en sus capacidades matemáticas, que fue algo que realmente no esperábamos, no fue el enfoque del estudio o del programa. Frente a las actitudes, que es una barrera muy importante con la población que muchas veces se siente excluidas del sistema financiero y de los bancos, vimos que han logrado generar mucho más confianza en el banco. La gente expresaron más optimismo para el futuro, y también hubo un incremento en confianza dentro de la comunidad. No confianza en total en el mundo entero, sino confianza dentro de su comunidad, y creemos que esto fue parte como del hecho de que haciendo la rotación con la población se lograron generar estos lazos dentro de la comunidad. Y finalmente, hablando del desempeño, que esto es lo que más le interesa a la gente, ¿no? La gente han logrado poner en práctica lo que aprendieron, y tuvimos cambios en las prácticas financieras de los participantes, y de hecho un incremento en los ahorros de la gente. Y eso es algo muy importante, porque efectivamente eso fue el enfoque, que más allá de generar una capacidad financiera, de lograr que la gente usa el producto financiero que el gobierno les ha dado, estamos también logrando que poco a poco están empezando a ahorrar, que de verdad es una cosa maravillosa ver. Y vemos que este tipo de modelo de la integración de la tecnología tiene mucha potencialidad, y de hecho logramos bajar sustancialmente los costos de implementación. Está como en 1/4 del costo de lo que tuvimos previamente con lo presencial. Entonces, muchas gracias por su atención, y abierto para preguntas.
Thank you for the panel for staying on time. I just want to also note, interesting to complement the presentations, you know, that in developing countries, according to the Gallup World Poll, 65% of adults living in the wealthiest 60% of households use the internet on a regular basis or have access to the internet, versus less than 30% of adults living in the bottom 40% of households. So it's also important, as we really move towards a mode of delivery through apps, through smartphone technology, to make sure we're not leaving behind those without access to the technology. Questions are coming. Thank you. This isn't just, so the question to those who talked about youth, it was whether in some cultures it's considered socially inappropriate. I discovered this while piloting financial inclusion questionnaires last year in East Asia, for example, where it's considered socially inappropriate to discuss money around the kitchen table. How does the software, what sort of programs address those sort of cultural norms?
Okay. It's a really interesting one, because actually, you know, very much people come and find us and download Rooster Money. So there's that kind of intent there. I come from a family where my dad, his father didn't talk to him about money at all. It was a very English thing. You don't talk about money, right? So I think in a lot of cultures, actually talking about it, you know, it is traditionally not there. And that's changing, because people are becoming very aware that ultimately things are changing so quickly, both on the macro and micro level, that you need to have those conversations. So certainly we've had a really positive response, and yes, our samples in particular areas around the world are limited, but it's that heavy usage and discussion that works well. And it also depends what you're talking about, right? So yes, one of the problems actually cited by teachers in schools is that they can't make it personal. You can't talk about sums of money and what people earn, and that's one of the big blocks they find. Whereas actually when you take it into the home, you can talk about it in the context that you want to. So if you want to talk about your mortgage, you can. If you want to talk about the fact that you've got financial challenges, you can, but it just depends to the extent that you want to go.
Thank you. Continuing on the youth theme for David, the question was whether you've done any sort of longer-term impact on the financial decisions that these children make as adults or as young adults once they start making independent financial decisions.
Well, we started with the first program that we had was that for children in primary school, and then after we started with the one for adolescents. But it was developed more because of the market or the partner organizations were asking for it. And then it was also part of the academia that is behind all the content that they discovered that it was more important to start like the earlier the better for everyone. So we developed a flat tot because we consider that if we create children capable of discussing not only money but resources and also all the challenges that they have in their everyday life, at some point it's going to be just sustainable. So it's obviously a long-term decision like any other educational initiative. We are not trying to change, or we are not trying to have immediate results, but we're trying to change behaviors in the long run.
So 2 questions for Zaydun. Along the lines of, have you faced challenges promoting the supply of credit? Once you've created these better profiles, do you find lenders willing to step in and lend against your perhaps newly scientific scores?
Absolutely. So today, I'll give you an example. We are live today in 2 countries, in the United States and in Uruguay. We will be live in Colombia and in Canada by the end of the year. But the example in Uruguay, the lender had an 80% rejection rate for their loans. Through the use of our platform, they were able to reduce that to 62%, which means they added an incremental 18%. And those consumers actually perform better than the folks that they have using just traditional data. So there's an Equifax credit bureau that has some basic information. There's a government database that has negative information. And so as you can imagine, my view are on these things. So in the negative database, if there isn't any negative, you take it as a positive. So the data, transactional data, just does not provide a good picture. In the US, we work with many of the top online lenders, P2P lenders, and through the use of Revolution Credit, one of the largest ones is able to actually approve or add incrementally 15% more loans to their book. Again, because all we're doing is just showing the true picture of the consumer. There is some nudging. So when we actually, so in every one of those studies, when we look, we are doing segmentation by showing the real people that they should be lending to. But the experience of going through a financial education and being tested and tested and tested, because we actually, the construct that we use is called a 1-minute credit clinic, which means we give you a 1 minute of video and then a 1 minute where you actually have to do a puzzle or a game. And then a minute of video, puzzle or a game. Minute of video, puzzle or a game. And then we actually test you on the entire content. So we see nudging happen as well.
Nice. And Anna, I have a question for you. You touched on building financial capability among those receiving government transfer payments. which are often the most vulnerable segments of the population, most likely to be illiterate, innumerate. Could you just talk a little bit more about specifically how you try to educate those more vulnerable populations?
Sure. So, I did highlight our work with cash transfer recipients, but we do work with other populations as well. One of the challenges, essentially, is that for a long time, these programs were seen as just a way of giving some social support and social welfare. And so there wasn't this vision of long-term investment and sustainability. And over time, as we've seen more research come out and the programs have themselves evolved, there is more of a look at a consideration of the potential linkages that the programs can have, which is why we started seeing a push towards digitization of the payments, the inclusion of financial education capabilities, as well as the promotion of savings. And with these cash transfer programs, the recipients tend to be the female heads of households who receive the bank account in their name. And in a machista culture, it's not typical for women to be the ones with the accounts. And we see this with vulnerable communities in Southeast Asia as well. So getting over some of those barriers that are internal, often particularly to the female gender, so incorporating elements of empowerment, including and integrating videos of other women who look like me, who have achieved success, has had a lot of touch points, as well as even sort of going through the modes of practicing in games, so that when I really liked the comment this morning about putting the checkbooks into the history books, that really, when we think about financial education, it doesn't have to be, we don't ask people to, what is the formula for calculating, or like here's a how would you calculate interest on this loan? We don't ask them to do that math. We ask them we want them to ask the right questions, to know that they have the right as consumers to demand this information and to know what questions to ask. And just to consider, we don't say that saving under your mattress is inherently bad and banks are inherently good, but a mix of the two is important, and you have to understand the risks associated, so the pros and the cons of each way. So while it is a simplification of some of the content, what's important is also not to dumb it down to the point where you're assuming that people don't know how to manage their money, because people who don't have a lot of money know way better than anybody how to make that one little bit go a long way. And so it's just about seeing where you can add value, which is why I emphasize the element of co-creation and to understand and really go through. I mean, we've been through 3 different iterations of this app, and there will be many more. And we're now looking what it's going to look like on smartphones. So it's a constant evolution or revolution, depending on how you put it. But it's certainly a challenge, and every country context is also different and unique.
Before getting to Carlos, I think you've touched on this, but the question whether the use of technology is the key mechanism for the transmission of knowledge on your platform, or do you think you'd have similar output by handing out comic books or other mode of delivery?
I think it's a combination. So we've done both, and the research has shown that if you were just to distribute tablets, it wouldn't have had as much of an effect as this notion of the community coming together. So perhaps one day, when more people have their own smartphone devices, when it can be personalized, when it can be linked to your account, when it's more common for this population to use it, we'll see technology sort of taking a leading role. It was designed as a self-teaching tool, so it could work on its own. But there is something nice that happens within that community and the conversation, and especially when it's within somebody's home, is that, going back to the question about the dialogue, when you have these large format conversations and these traditional in-person trainings, you don't get into the nitty-gritty of personal finance. And Beth had touched on this a little bit before about that notion of privacy, particularly when discussing personal finance. So it depends on the context, but I think that in the future we will see more of a role for technology, and certainly we're achieving economies of scale with decreasing costs per person significantly. And so it's a model that we need to move forward to, because there's so many benefits that come from it. The digital revolution is coming, but you cannot get rid of that human piece.
Thank you. And perhaps the hardest question for last. I was also quite interested in your work towards formalization of ROSCAs while keeping the social dimension, but adding the safety and developing relationship and a history with financial institutions. So the question is specifically, how do you evaluate the social impact of the financial education that you're providing? Or just perhaps you want to talk just more generally about the social impact of this work.
Yes, sure. We have run different research with World Bank, for example, about different experiments that we have done in the past. And we have seen, of course, important increases not only in the capabilities of the people that are taking those courses or that coaching that we have provided them, but also in the usage of their financial products. For example, in credit cards, we ran a program for giving them financial coaching, and the past due loans for them decreased in an important percentage of what they had before taking that coaching. Then we are strong believers that what we are doing, it's having an impact. And what we are doing now in terms of digital financial education will have much more impact and will be much more scalable. We know that there are some technology barriers for some segments, that they don't have access yet to smartphones or to data, or to data with accessible cost for them. But, for example, here we are paying the data of all our apps. Then that will increase a lot the usage of our apps for the base of the pyramid.
And with that, I thank the panel and the audience.